We've been talking to you, if you've been listening to us for a while, we've been talking to you endlessly about ways that you can focus toward what you want. Now, we know that sometimes it's not very meaty or interesting to think about what you want when what you don't want is so vivid. But we want to demonstrate here at the beginning of this gathering in a way that you will really understand. It will help you to understand everything that unfolds later. It will help you understand many of the conversations that we're going to have today with people who are sitting in the hot seat. We want you to understand how this powerful law of attraction and this construction of thought works. So it's easy to understand that there are things that you don't want, and it's relatively easy to understand that the clearer you are about what you don't want, the clearer you are about what you do want. But the thing that is tricky is that if you have been over time, or even over a brief amount of time intensely, if you've been specifically, and intensity and specificity are the same thing. In other words, the more attention you give, the more specific you get. And the more specific you are, then the more powerful your point of attraction is. So if you've been, let's say that someone did something that bothered you, and you noticed it, it bothered you, you took the hit, you didn't like it, but you didn't leave it there. You thought about it longer. In fact, you stewed over it. You brooded over it. You pondered it. You seethed over it. You thought about it. You felt the offness of it initially. You felt the I don't want thisness of it, but you didn't leave it there because you have forgotten how powerful you are, and you've forgotten about the construction of these pathways. So you thought about it and you stewed about it, and as you stewed about it, the first thing that happened is every other thing that that person has ever done that's sort of like that begins to come to your mind, because law of attraction is gathering up all the cooperative components. So everything they've ever done that was ever even a little bit like that come to your mind, and now you're justified. You explain to yourself and some innocent bystander that walks into your experience, I'm not making this stuff up. You say, I'm not making this up. And then the next thing that happens is law of attraction reaches further than just in your thought ways. It reaches out into the environment that surrounds you and brings to you the cooperative components of other people who have that same issue active in their vibration. And now you've got a real festival going. Now you're having conversations. So now what we're getting at is something that started out maybe sort of general has now become more and more and more and more and more and more and more specific. And it's gathering power, not because it in and of itself is a powerful thing, but by your attention to it. When we say something gathers power, what we're really talking about is the construction of thought waves power, because there are a lot of things that are powerful out there that if they're not active in your vibration, they're not going to show themselves to you at all. And so it doesn't matter how powerful they are. There's no law of assertion in this universe. Nothing can come after you. You got to be a cooperative component to each and everything that comes into your experience every single time. And if it's not active in your vibration, doesn't matter how big and bad and awful it seems to others who are engaged in it, it will not touch you in any way. It's law. Law of attraction will not bring it to you. So you've got this active thing going on, and as it's active, you're feeling it, and the more you think about it, the more specific it gets. So here's the thing that we want you to hear. You started out with a sort of general negative thing, but because you were not diligent about your thought, or maybe even knowledgeable about the power of your thought, you focused on it, and you got increasingly specific about this thing that you do not want. And as you got increasingly specific about this thing you do not want, you gained power. It gained power. It gained attraction power to you. So now you really know what you don't want. So then some bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, non-physical source energy shows up in your experience and says, you create your own reality. And you really want to think about what you want, and when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. And if you've got something really specifically, therefore really powerful going on in your experience, your response to us is you would like to punch our lights out, because you can't all of a sudden get specifically positive when you've been specifically negative. So the point that we're making, that we really want you to hear, is you constructed a pathway that's really dishing out the goods to you. And the more it dishes them out, the more justified you feel in talking about them, in explaining them, in observing them, in blogging about them, in going to those intervention places about them. In other words, the more you don't want it, the bigger it gets. The bigger it gets, the more it comes. The more it comes, the more you give your attention to it. The more you give your attention to it, the bigger it gets. The bigger it gets, the more it comes, because you've built the pathways.